My name is LAARS Head, and my world-renowned psychic abilities are well known. But if you do not know me, it is simply because for the last 15 years I've been forced to occupy the shadowy underworld of the phantasmagorical. To some, I am known as Shaman. To others, Diabolist. The uninitiated refer to me simply by my given name, LAARS Head. Like many children, I grew up, but that is where the similarities cease, because unlike other children growing up in the Pontypridd area, we moved soon afterwards. I had a spirit guide. My spirit guide is a conduit to the world beyond this world. With his sanction, I am able to channel the essences of those who have crossed beyond the veil. I am then able to translate the messages they direct to their still living friends and family. I pass these messages on. Sometimes, I incorporate regional accents. With your help, it's time to put my intensive training into action. And so now, I begin my ministry. Over the years, I've consistently traveled the hard road, doing battle with my personal demons of drink, drugs, and critical self-loathing. Now, with my chakras in order, I set out on a spiritualist crusade. I will teach Britain's disaffected youth the art of mesmerism, promote true spiritualism and mediumship, and crucially, help everyone get the most out of their dead friends and relatives. Amen.
Ladies and gentlemen, tonight at Seaburn Social Club we are very honoured indeed. We are going to bring you Britain's 5th biggest TV psychic and ghost detector, Mr. LAARS Head. Now, in the last 12 months, LAARS has gone from being the 7th biggest psychic in the UK to the 5th. And he's done that through hard work, through skill, through dedication, a retirement and a death. And now he's up to 5th, ladies and gentlemen. And I'd like you to give a big, warm welcome and thanks indeed to Mr. LAARS Head.
Good evening. As you're obviously aware, my name is LAARS Head. I wanted to start tonight's demonstration of my preternatural gifts, though if anything, gift is too small a word, by reading some of your auric fields. Your aura, auric field, or human energy field if you will, is a colored emanation that surrounds the human body. In many esoteric doctrines, and in the writings of the Daily Mail's Jonathan Caner, the aura is described as the subtle body. Psychics, like what I am, have the ability to see the size, color, and type of vibration of an aura. The human auric field is part of the hidden anatomy, linked to the celestial empyrean. It reflects the state of being and comprises of the centers of vital force that we call the chakras. Madam, you in the front row, I am immediately drawn to you. I see a great light emanating from you, like dancing fire, bursting displays of color, like heliotrope and burnt sienna. To me, this speaks volumes of your kindness, generosity, and altruism. Do you mind me asking what you do for a living? You work in the charity sector? Well, that doesn't surprise me at all. You, sir. The man there with the bottle of Beck's lager and your shins unaccountably on display. Do you mind me asking what you do? You work in high-end concepts. I have literally no idea what that means. But you need to sort your life out, because right now, your aura is a kind of shit brown.
Now, a word from our sponsors.
Republished in full for the first time since 1968, the definitive How the World Works collection of stories by beloved children's author Richard Scarry, including the classic children's books Murder Town and What Do Serial Killers Do All Day. It's morning in Murder Town. What are you up to, Freddy Fox?
I'm eating an onion like it's an apple and dreaming about my old ice cream van.
Very good, Fred. Oh, look, there's Ted Tiger. What are you up to, Ted?
Well, I'm just standing outside my camper van with this fake sling on my arm, trying to look non-threatening, I guess.
Har har, very good. Let's go visit John, the jumping spider. Hey, what have you been up to, John?
Well, sir, I've just been dressing up as Pogo the Clown to entertain the local children, you know.
That's great, John. I bet they really appreciate that. Now let's take a visit over to Ed Emu's lonely farmhouse and see how he's doing, since his mother sadly passed away.
Well, truth be told, I'm not doing much. I'm just fashioning a belt out of these human nipples.
That's sick, Ed, but so real. And children should know about these things. Coming soon, this classic series of heart-chilling children's stories, available only from Dascoin Press. LAARS HEAD'S SUPERNORMAL.
Featuring exclusive extracts from LAARS Head's forthcoming autobiography, There Is No Life.
Chapter 1. Ghosts of My Past. For many years, I have been urged by some of my more powerful, influential, and wealthy friends to write an account of the preternatural things I have experienced since I began to make a study of the science of spiritualism. In finally putting pen to paper, footnote, figuratively speaking, I'm dictating to my PA, I shall of course confine myself to the recording of facts. I will describe the scenes I have witnessed with my own eyes, and refer only to those things I have heard with my own ears, leaving the deduction to be drawn from these experiences to you, the listener. What you will make of them, I can only guess, but safe to say, my expectations are low. I have no ambition to start a theory, nor to promulgate a doctrine. Above all things, I have no desire to provoke argument. I have had more than enough of these, whether they be philosophical, scientific, religious, or just plain moronic, to last a lifetime. In one particularly disturbing encounter, a clergyman from the Kettering area pinioned me to the ground of a service station forecourt, before giving me a vicious Chinese burn, and declaring, "Ghosts are wankers!" Sadly, an experience that the modern truth-seeker must get used to. Though I am about to record a great many incidents that are so marvelous as to be almost incredible, I do not expect to be disbelieved, except by such that are capable of deception themselves. Those that are conscious of their own infirmity invariably believe other people must be telling lies. Accordingly, the modern understanding of the universe and the human condition is a manifestly narrow, drab, and hopeless one, propagated by the likes of fusty, coffee-breathed lying academics, like the pretender Professor Richard Dawkins. This so-called scientific view maintains that there is no spiritual realm, and nothing in the human experience beyond the corporeal. Footnote, I'm guessing, naturally I haven't really looked into this, which is just clearly muddle-headed. Anyone who is even remotely sensitive to the true vibrations of the cosmos will know this to be nonsensical. Indeed, anyone who has ever seen a cat's eyes fixate on a seemingly empty corner of a room must know that there is more going on. Though it is not generally known, my father, the late entertainer and showbiz editor of the Daily Star, Russell Head, was not only a believer in ghosts, but also a ghost seer himself. Perhaps the ease with which such manifestations have come to me is in fact a gift that I received from him. Certainly he shared the belief and the power of spiritual sight with me. My father was not like his intimate circle of friends, David Van Day, Lord Brocket, Duncan Norvell and Martin Daniels, who are of course famously highly strung, nervous and imaginative men. I genuinely do not believe my father was scared of anything, and he evidently had very little imagination. Certainly his personal journals are tedious in the extreme. When he passed over to join the great majority in 2015, my father bequeathed to me 47 full-page leather-bound diaries charting nearly half a century of his daily ablutions in extraordinarily stark language. Naturally, at no point have I sought to have these records published. However, it is clear from the prosaic style that these represent some of the truest histories of their time. There is scarcely a line of fiction in them. I have heard that my father had a number of stories to relate of supernatural incidents that had occurred to him, but I will content myself with relating such as were proved to be, at least, very remarkable coincidences. In my ever-popular, acclaim-worthy blog, The Massive Gift of LAARS Head, I have previously related the following anecdote of my father's, which he told to me on a rainy Saturday afternoon in the mid-1990s, in the Braintree branch of the Harvester restaurant, which we would often visit in order to make use of the excellent early bird menu discount and the facilities, but reference to which, of course, was never entered into his private log. Some years earlier, when I was still an infant, my father had been employed as an onboard entertainer on the Sea Cat, one of the more prestigious ferries on the line between Portsmouth and Fishbourne. As cabaret singer cum comedian, it was my father's job to entertain the passengers in the Sunset Show Lounge by singing songs made popular by Chas and Dave and the Barron Knights, and by telling the usual one-liners about homosexuals and leprosy that were de rigueur at the time. One night, after my father had come off stage and returned to his compartment, he was relaxing in the bath with a toothed glass of whiskey, watching Shelley on his portable television, when he heard the door of his cabin open. To his utter astonishment, it was the form of his brother Mark that had entered the bathroom and walked quietly up to his side. Rather than looking like an apparition or wraith, Mark looked just as he had done in life, and uttered in a perfectly drab voice, "Russell, I've come to tell you that I'm dead. Please return my library book." My father jumped up from the water, glancing away only for a moment in order to grab a flannel to hide his modesty. Footnote, his penis. But when he looked up again, the form of his brother was gone. So vivid was the impression made upon him by the incident that he wrote down all the particulars concerning it on his Bo Derek wall calendar, including the hour and day of its appearance. Upon returning to England 2 nights later, my father was met by my grandmother in the ferry terminal at Portsmouth, who immediately delineated the circumstances of my uncle's death. He had, in fact, passed away at the very minute of the hour that he had visited my father's cabin. The cause was determined to be a massive pulmonary embolism. Revealingly, He was clutching a book of humorous graffiti borrowed from his local library at the time. Sure, many listeners will simply assume this to be nothing more than an ordinary coincidence. But as I have already said, my father was an extraordinarily dreary man, and not prone to flights of fancy. Anyone that can recall either his comedy career or his showbiz articles would easily attest to as much. The listener must draw from it what they will, and of course, I will do nothing to persuade them either way. The clear thinkers will naturally come down on the side of the supernormal, and the closed-minded naysayers will remain firmly shackled to their own prejudices. Before I took on my own spiritualist quest, I had already had many experiences with the dead. Unlike my father, I would routinely record these events which started very early in my life. Though I have never spoken of these incidents before, it does now seem like the time is right for me to lay them before the public in a way that is without affectation or elaboration. Footnote: the advance from my publishers stipulates that I must tell this part of the story, so it's basically contractual. I had a somewhat disturbed childhood, due largely to my father's many affairs with glamorous magicians' assistants that he met on board the ferries. Considering his lack of charm, and his tendency to nip off 3 or 4 times a day to jot down details of his own anal effluence, he always did surprisingly well with ladies of a certain stripe. Indeed, when I think of him now, he will typically have upon his arm some dull-eyed, bubble-permed blonde, wearing a ball gown covered in doves. As a direct consequence of one of my father's affairs, my mother moved us out from the family home in Snaresbrook, East London, to her parents' house in Pontypridd, Wales. Accordingly, at the age of 10, I was enrolled at the Coed Pen Mine County Primary School, where, because of my English accent and excessive portliness, I was looked on as an outsider, even by the teachers. At this time, feeling extremely unsettled, I would regularly have sleepless nights, and would, within the scratchy half-light of my bedroom, often see a very short, possibly deformed old lady seated at the end of my bed, looking over me. I would scream out to my mother, but she did nothing about it. This persisted until a few days after my 13th birthday, when quite suddenly the old woman stopped visiting me, and for several weeks the space that she would normally occupy remained empty. I didn't know what had happened to her, but later I found out the old lady had died. This was my first experience of death, and I was hooked. After school most days, when my classmates were playing football or hunting for copies of Razzle in the shrubbery of Ardnisang Harrod War Memorial Park, I would instead spend time in solitary contemplation in the local graveyards. As a consequence, I was nicknamed LAARS Headstone by some of the more waggish members of my class. They obviously considered these wanderings amongst the monuments to be something morbid. But I wasn't daunted. After all, where else but in a cemetery can you see such concrete proof of human love? One day, when I was walking home after school and taking a stroll through Glyntaff Cemetery, I paused to read a particularly difficult Welsh name etched on the front of a memorial stone, and ended up pronouncing it incorrectly. I only learned of my error when the occupant of the grave chastised me, using what I recall now to be some fairly salty language. It came as a surprise to find that others were not privy to the voices of the dead, and that I was, in fact, intensely gifted. When I relayed the incident of the ghost and the gravestone to my mother and grandmother at dinner that night, they both looked askance at me, and my mother told me in a very severe tone never to mention it to anyone again. It seems remarkable now, of course, but the early 1990s were unenlightened times, and the gift of supernatural clairaudience was then considered akin to an embarrassing fault of the brain, like dyslexia. Due largely to my mother's stern decree and the palpable fear in her eyes, I did turn my back on my gift for some years. However, I have subsequently learned to embrace my difference, though, as you will discover, it took some time. And I have since then spent a good deal of time in dialogue with spirits of different kinds, learning about the different energy realms and the celestial ladders that exist between them. Just as a hippie, loafer, or student might choose to use artificial stimulants, such as illegal hallucinogenic drugs, in order to transcend the mystical gateways of the mind, I have striven to do the same. However, as a spiritualist, I prefer to search for answers in a gentler, more humble way. To this day, you will often find me, in times of contemplation, sitting alone in a suburban churchyard, rocking forward and back and listening to the many voices in my head. What's that? You saw me being exposed by Darren Brown. I hardly think you did. If you did view that piece of trash on Channel 4, it should be fairly obvious I knew exactly what was going on. Darren Brown is a complete joke. He's absurd. Him and his little beard. I knew exactly what he was doing. I just played along. To me, the man is as readable as the Richard Littlejohn column. I knew all his little tricks. He didn't expose me. If anything, I chose to expose myself. And let me tell you, he didn't like it one little bit. The old lady sitting on her own at the back there. Yeah, you in the hat. There's no one here from the other side that wants to speak to you. Just go home.
Now, a word from our sponsors.
Do you fail to attract the people you want to attract? Does your career feel like it's on standby while your colleagues seem to sail past you? Does your fecal matter smell terrible? If the answer to any of these questions is yes, then you can benefit from the healing power of crystals. At Toby's Crystal Emporium, Basingstoke, we know that energy is everywhere, and crystals are the perfect conduit to enhance your physical, emotional, and spiritual balance. The vibrations of our crystals are known to adapt to the energy that surrounds them. So whether you choose amethyst, rose quartz, tiger eye, akimbo berserker, or Richard Blackwood, how the stones choose to transmit their frequency will be dependent on your own personal spirit energy. Get down to Toby's Crystal Emporium, West Ham Lane, Basingstoke today and see our complete range of healing stones. People say that crystals don't work, but have you ever seen a sick person with crystals? If you have, it's probably just a coincidence. Toby's Crystal Emporium, where spiritual energy rocks.
There's no scientific basis for the claim that crystals have healing properties. If you're ill, consult a medical professional. Don't buy stupid crystals. They don't do anything. They're stones, for God's sake. Don't be an idiot.
Come. Please come in, sit down. I appreciate you taking the time. Though I expect you weren't up to much, and let's face it, it's probably a bit of an honor. Do try to relax. I'm not a monster. Stop fidgeting. Cigarette? No? Okay, well let me begin by telling you something of the role. You see, I'm doing a pilot for a new paranormal television show next year with the rap star Dane Bowers. And since it seems he's gotten himself an assistant, and we're co-presenters, I figured I'd best make similar moves.
Though in fairness to Dane, he doesn't really like to make moves, preferring instead to stand around industrial complexes in a puffer jacket and yellow sunglasses. Anyway, if you do succeed to the role as my psychic sidekick, it's important that you know the duties, like the remuneration, are light. And as I intend to pay significantly less than minimum wage, I realized I needed someone young. Someone I could mold, preferably in my own image. Someone with no previous experience. And well, let's just say, your CV was refreshingly succinct, containing, as it does, only your Christian name, your age, and I see a crude rendering of a pheasant. Plus, your mother tells me that you are not only clairaudient, but that you were named Young Psychic of the Year last year by the late Derek Acora, and as such awarded the ceremonial blouson-style leather jacket. Impressive. Well, Henry, it says here you're 4 years old. Is that correct?
Yeah.
I see. Well then, tell me, young man, in your experience, what precisely are ghosts?
Henry can see ghosts, but Dad and Mum can't, and they can go through walls.
Ah. And what do these ghosts that you see actually do?
They jump out at people and they scare them.
They scare them? Well, I suppose some people are very guileless in matters supernatural, are they not? Tell me, Henry, what exactly do these manifestations you speak of actually look like? Do they look like normal people?
Yeah, but with no legs and with no jumpers.
No jumpers? Extraordinary. The lack of a jumper denotes a Class 5 full roaming vapour. Where exactly do you see these ghosts?
They come in all different rooms, and they only come in our house.
Tell me, do you believe these manifestations to be spirits of dead people?
No.
Well, what then?
They are ghosts of dead people.
Right, that's quite pedantic. I think you'll find when it comes to waxing spiritual, very few people wish to get into an argument with me. Indeed, very few people want to get in a conversation with me. What exactly do you do with these spirits?
K.
K? Do you mean play?
Yeah.
Right. What sort of games could you possibly play with the spirits of the departed?
Hide and seek, but they don't hide in walls.
They don't hide in the walls? Well, I guess that would be cheating. But they could hide in the walls if they wanted to.
Yeah, they only go in the walls if they want to go outside.
I see. Tell me, when these spirits are in the house, where do they normally hang out?
In the bedroom.
The bedroom? You mean your parents' bedroom?
Yeah.
I see. Well, the plot thickens. Sounds more like a focused voyeuristic repeating phantasm, or classic lurker. Real nasty one, too. Tell me, Henry, without references to jumpers, what do these spirits look like? Do they have faces?
No noses.
No noses?
Oh, there goes just right there.
There's a ghost right there. What, in here? They've invaded the sanctum of my rumpus room. Shit, what does it want?
So they sleep in this house, and they stay in this house for a long, long time.
Okay, you're actually freaking me out slightly now. Do you know when this ghost was alive?
They can be alive at any time. They don't die.
Right, yes, I get that. They're ghosts.
'Cause they don't have any blood and bones.
Yes, right, I get it. But what does it actually look like? Does it dress like figures from the olden days?
No, they don't have any hats or jumpers.
Jumpers again?
And no legs.
No legs? Well, how do they get around?
They lie.
They fly? Well, that sounds a bit weird. Tell me, how is it you're not scared rigid by these legless phantoms?
Well, Henry's friendly ones have legs.
So yours do have legs?
Yeah.
I see. So your ghosts are friendly. But what of the darker, more malevolent spirits? What of them? What things do they do?
They can pinch, but they can't pinch.
They can pinch, but they can't pinch. You speak in riddles. So you're saying they can't hurt you. Is that right?
No.
I see. In your opinion, why are some spirits evil?
They don't know what to do.
So you're saying they're just confused?
Yeah.
And, without making any specific reference to jumpers, how are we to know these malign spectres?
They have back arms and back jumpers.
Finally then, Henry, how do you think it is that a 4-year-old child is able to see these ghosts when I, a fully fledged seer, well practiced in the dark arts, and a Class A wand handler, am unable?
You don't have special eyes like Henry.
I see. Well, I think I've heard enough. Thank you for your time. You can see yourself out.
Goodbye.
Fucking time waster. You, sir, in the middle row. Am I right in thinking you've recently lost someone? A maternal figure has recently crossed to the other side, am I right? Ah, your grandmother. Yes, I see. Well, you needn't worry. She is here with you now, looking over you. In fact, she's always looking over you. And I do mean always. So, you know, that thing you do late at night, that you think makes you sleep better, maybe stop doing that. Really? Do I have to spell it out to you? Late at night, when you're playing with your body like it's some kind of one-armed bandit. Yeah? Oh, and she says clean your sheets. And I shall leave you with that. I shall leave you with that. Good night.
You big tit.
LAARS Head's Supernormal is over now. Written and performed by LAARS Head. Researched by E.O. Higgins and John Patrick Higgins. With additional music and noises by Thessalian Studios. Produced by E.O. Higgins.
There is no life and no death. Merely a misunderstanding of the ever-decreasing energy vibration. I am at the center of that energy, swaying gently.
You big tit.